Welcome to Reddit Affairs, the place where secrets are revealed and hearts are broken. Sit back, relax, and let the story take you on an emotional ride. And remember, if you love deep, dramatic stories, don't forget to subscribe and support the channel. Michael had always believed he knew his wife, Claire, inside and out. At 42, they had shared almost 2 decades of life together, with a comfortable rhythm of marriage built on routines, shared memories, and predictable intimacy. He prided himself on understanding her moods, her quiet laughter, the way she'd brush her hair behind her ear when lost in thought. But recently, there had been something different. It started subtly, the way she lingered on her phone, longer than usual. The sudden sparkle in her eyes when she returned from the grocery store, as if the world outside their apartment held more excitement than the life they had cultivated together. Michael dismissed it at first. Perhaps it was stress, a midlife awakening, or some fleeting curiosity about the world beyond their cozy city apartment. But deep down, a knot of unease was forming in his chest. One evening, Michael returned home early from work, hoping to surprise Claire with dinner reservations at their favorite Italian restaurant. He wanted to rekindle the spark they had in their early days. The teasing smiles, the light touches, the stolen kisses in hallways and elevators. Yet, when he entered the apartment, he found it empty. The faint smell of her perfume lingered, and the lights were dimmed as if someone had intentionally set the mood for something or someone else. Michael checked his phone and saw a message from Claire. Out with a friend? Be back late. Don't wait up. The words seemed innocent. Yet there was an unfamiliar cadence to them, a subtle implication that she was someone's focus tonight. He tried to push the thought aside, telling himself he was being paranoid. Days passed, and the pattern continued. Claire's laughter became slightly more intoxicating, her smile a little more daring when she left the apartment. Michael began to notice the way she dressed now. Fitted dresses that hugged her curves, shoes with just enough height to draw attention to the graceful sway of her hips. She was still the woman he loved, but now she seemed to be performing for someone else, and the realization both enraged and thrilled him. He remembered their early years, the passionate nights spent entwined in desire, the way her hands would tremble at his touch, the whispered confessions in the dark. He had always thought they were unbreakable, immune to the temptations of the outside world. But as he scrolled through his phone late one night, he saw something that shattered that illusion entirely. A series of messages from a man named Daniel. The flirtation was unmistakable. Soft teasing, hints at secret meetings, and laughter conveyed through words alone. Michael felt a strange mix of betrayal and curiosity. Who was Daniel? What did Claire feel for him? Was it merely a fleeting distraction, or something more profound? He watched her more closely now, noting the way her eyes would light up when checking her phone, the secretive smiles, the almost imperceptible touches of her own body as she dressed or groomed herself. That night, when Claire returned home, the tension in the apartment was palpable. Michael greeted her with a neutral smile, trying to mask the storm within. "Dinner's ready," he said softly. She looked at him, her eyes flickering briefly with a warmth that he couldn't fully decipher. As she sat across from him, nibbling on her salad, Michael noticed a faint scent of another man's cologne mingled with her perfume. His stomach twisted. Claire was right there, yet part of her had already ventured elsewhere, into someone else's world. After dinner, Claire moved to the couch, scrolling on her phone, laughing softly at something that Michael couldn't see. The intimacy that once defined their evenings had evaporated, replaced by a quiet distance, an invisible barrier that neither of them dared to cross directly. Michael felt a surge of longing and anger simultaneously. He wanted to reach for her, to reclaim her, but feared pushing her further away. As he drifted to sleep that night, Michael realized that nothing would ever be the same. The subtle shift had become undeniable. Claire was changing, and he was powerless to stop it. The erotic tension, the unspoken desires, and the cold reality of betrayal were already weaving a complex web around their lives, a web that Michael didn't know how to untangle without destroying everything he thought he knew. The following week, Michael tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. He immersed himself in work, in meetings, in the predictable rhythm of his city life. Yet everywhere he turned, Claire lingered at the edges of his thoughts. The apartment felt different now, Not cold, exactly, but charged with quiet energy that made him tense, alert, and unsettled. Every small gesture she made carried hidden meaning, every glance potential secret. Then came the party, a casual gathering with neighbors and friends. Nothing extraordinary, yet Michael felt an unusual unease as they entered. Claire moved the crowd with a grace that seemed designed to captivate, her laughter ringing just a little louder, her eyes scanning the room in a way that made his chest tighten. He followed her, trying to mask his anxiety with polite smiles and light conversation, but he couldn't shake the sense that something was about to happen beyond his control. And then he saw him, Daniel. Michael didn't know the man personally, but he recognized him instantly from the messages. Daniel was striking in a way that made Michael immediately feel inferior, tall, confident, with that easy charm and a casual smile that seemed to disarm everyone in the room. Claire's reaction was immediate and undeniable. Her body shifted subtly toward him, her laughter more daring, her hand brushing his arm in a fleeting, electric touch. Michael's stomach twisted. He wanted to confront her, to pull her back into his orbit, but part of him was frozen, drawn to the forbidden energy between them. Watching Claire interact with Daniel was like observing a live wire, dangerous, intoxicating, impossible to look away from. Later, they stepped onto the balcony, away from the crowd. Michael followed, pretending to admire the city lights, but his attention was locked on Claire. She leaned against the railing, the soft evening breeze lifting strands of hair across her face, and for a moment, she looked at him. Not him, really, but him filtered through the presence of Daniel. "You've been distant," Michael said, his voice steady though his heart raced. She turned to him, eyes flickering with a mixture of guilt and thrill. I needed space," she replied, her words soft, almost a whisper, yet charged with meaning. "It's nothing you did. I just needed to feel alive outside of us." Michael swallowed hard. The familiar comfort of their shared life felt fragile now, threatened by the sudden, undeniable magnetism that Daniel exuded. "And does Daniel make you feel alive?" he asked quietly, though he already knew the answer. Claire's lips curved into a fleeting, enigmatic smile. "Maybe, maybe not. It's complicated." That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He imagined Claire's hands, her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she was near Daniel. He hated her for it, yet he craved it. The forbidden allure, the erotic charge of desire he could neither satisfy nor extinguish. He felt a strange mix of humiliation and excitement, the kind that left his body restless, his thoughts spinning with questions he didn't want answers to. The days that followed were a careful dance. Claire flirted openly yet subtly, every word and gesture layered with double meanings. Michael watched her closely, studying the curve of her smile, the tilt of her head, the way she'd adjust her dress in a way that caught his eye just long enough to ignite something he wished he could deny. It was erotic, torturous, and undeniable. One evening, Michael found himself alone in the apartment when Claire returned, her eyes shimmering with an emotion he couldn't name. She seemed distant yet vibrant, magnetic in a way that left him both desperate and resigned. She kissed him lightly on the cheek, a gesture that once would have promised intimacy, now carrying only fleeting comfort. "I'll be out late again," she murmured, almost casually, as if delivering a trivial piece of news rather than a declaration that sent his pulse racing. Michael nodded, forcing a calm exterior, though inside he was anything but. He spent hours imagining her with Daniel, the subtle touches, the soft whispers, the heat of forbidden encounters. And yet, despite the jealousy and hurt, a darker part of him was drawn to the scenario. There was a twisted thrill in witnessing the woman he loved being desired, in knowing that her body, her mind, her laughter, belonged partially to someone else. Michael realized that this was no longer merely about betrayal. It was about desire, control, and the power of seduction. Claire had discovered a side of herself he hadn't seen in years, and it was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. He wanted to reclaim her, yet part of him feared that the more he tried, the further she would slip into the orbit of Daniel's charm. As the week wore on, the tension in their apartment became almost unbearable. Every glance, every casual touch, every lingering smile between Claire and her phone, or between her and the fleeting images of Daniel he imagined, tightened the invisible coil around his chest. The erotic charge was undeniable. The thrill mingled with humiliation, and Michael found himself trapped in a cruel, exhilarating limbo. By the time Friday night arrived, Michael knew the inevitable confrontation was near. Claire returned, her presence carrying that magnetic energy he had come to fear and desire in equal measure. She looked at him, her eyes shimmering with a promise that was both thrilling and painful. "Michael," she began softly, but he could already feel the distance, the inevitability of her choices, the cold, erotic power of her independence. And in that moment, Michael understood some desires couldn't be tamed, some betrayals were too deep, and some hearts, no matter how loyal, were destined to ache in the shadow of forbidden passion. Michael had tried everything to reclaim the life he thought he had lost. He reminded himself of the early years, the passion, the late-night talks, the quiet comfort of shared routines. Yet every memory now carried a shadow, a reminder that Claire had changed, and there was no going back to the woman he once knew. The apartment no longer felt like a sanctuary. It was a stage for desire, betrayal, and his own restless fantasies. It began subtly, as it always had. Claire stayed later at work, or so she claimed, and the slight scent of another man's cologne would linger on her clothes. Michael tried to ignore it, convincing himself that jealousy was a weakness, that their bond was strong enough to survive any temptation. But deep down, he knew he was lying to himself. Every day, every interaction, reminded him of Daniel, the man who had wormed his way into the life of the woman he loved. One rainy Thursday evening, Michael came home early. He wanted, foolishly perhaps, to catch Claire off guard, to see her in her ordinary world, to prove to himself that nothing had changed. But as he opened the apartment door, he was met with a sight that would stay with him forever. Claire wasn't alone. Daniel was there, leaning casually against the kitchen counter, a drink in hand, his easy smile directed at Claire. She turned toward Michael, and for a moment, the warmth in her gaze seemed to falter, replaced by the thrill of exposure and audacity. The sight was like a punch to Michael's chest. Yet oddly, a small, dark part of him was exhilarated. This was the culmination of the tension he had felt for weeks, the full revelation of her desires. Claire approached Michael, her voice deceptively calm. "I didn't expect you home so early," she said, her eyes sparkling, not with guilt, but with the thrill of having him see. Michael struggled to find words. Anger, hurt, disbelief, all collided within him. "Who is he?" he managed to ask, his voice low, controlled, but trembling. Daniel chuckled lightly. "I'm just someone who appreciates Claire," he said, with that effortless charm that had driven Michael to distraction since the first messages. Claire laughed softly, a sound that once would have meant comfort, now a dagger twisting in Michael's chest. "Michael, I didn't plan for you to find out this way," she said, her tone almost gentle, underlined with confidence that left him powerless. "But this is who I am right now." The conversation that followed was surreal. Claire spoke of desires he had long ignored, of needs that he hadn't fulfilled, not in terms of neglect, but an inevitable evolution of a person discovering new facets of themselves. Michael listened, horrified and fascinated, as she described her connection with Daniel. The excitement, the erotic tension, the thrill of being desired in ways he had not anticipated. And yet, there was no anger in her words, only a cold honesty that cut deeper than any shouting match ever could. She was unapologetic because she felt no guilt. She had found something outside their marriage that made her feel alive, complete in ways he no longer could provide. Michael felt a strange, bitter mix of emotions. Part of him wanted to beg her to stay, to reclaim her, to force her back into the life they had built. Another part, a darker, more perverse part, was almost riveted by the sheer audacity, the erotic charge of her independence, the forbidden allure of watching her give herself to another. The days that followed were unbearable. Claire and Daniel's encounters became more open, more visible, and Michael's life turned into a theater of silent suffering. He returned home to find subtle signs, her perfume, a lingering laugh, a text message flashing on her phone that reminded him of the erotic tension that now dominated their household. He tried to confront her, to understand why, but every attempt was met with a calm, deliberate clarity. "I didn't stop loving you," she told him once, "but I am learning what it means to feel alive for myself. That's something you can't give me anymore, Michael." The statement crushed him. He wanted to argue, to yell, to beg, but he couldn't. She had already made her choice, and the truth was too raw, too complete. Claire had claimed the freedom he had never considered taking from her. Michael realized then that the woman he loved, the woman he had married, was gone, replaced by someone he could watch but never touch in a way he once had. Desire twisted into torment, erotic fascination into agony. The betrayal was complete, the cold truth undeniable. Love alone could not bind someone who had discovered her own independence. The finality hit on a quiet Sunday evening. Claire returned from a lunch date with Daniel, smiling, radiant, alive. Michael sat silently, heart pounding, chest tight with a mix of longing, hatred, and helpless fascination. She kissed him lightly on the cheek, a gesture that felt like both intimacy and dismissal. "I need to go out again," she said, her tone neutral, almost polite. "Don't wait up." And with that, she left, leaving Michael alone in their apartment. The city lights outside the window reflected his own solitude. He sat there, paralyzed by the mixture of erotic tension, grief, and humiliation, understanding fully that nothing would ever be the same. Somewhere in the shadows of desire and betrayal, Michael felt the cold truth settle into his bones. He had lost her not because of failure, but because love could not compete with the intoxicating allure of freedom and forbidden desire. The apartment, once a haven, was now a cage of memory and longing, each object a silent reminder of what he could no longer hold. And as the night deepened, Michael realized that this was the ultimate cruelty of betrayal. It was not the act itself that hurt the most, but the undeniable erotic charge of watching the woman you love slip completely out of your grasp, leaving only the cold, bitter ache of desire unmet and the gaping void of a life forever changed.